got a lot of weight and stuff going on. So my dad, no, I didn't see him. I thought it was Chicago. So my dad. Oh, yeah. We're potty training, so we're in that stage. Michelle said. I mean, he's going great games. Once it goes.
Can you all get seated and started, please?
She said she
We don't have a huge agenda, but there's always enough discussion to keep us rolling. Call to order, and we do have a quorum, and if you can all stand and do pledge allegiance, please.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I know mine.
So we do not have any public hearings today. So we'll move on to public comments. If there is anyone that has a comment they'd like to make, please keep it to 3 minutes. Approach the podium, your name and address, and any comments that you have.
That microphone's off at the minute, so if you can hit the button on it when you walk up, thanks. It worked.
This on? This on? Hi, my name is Mackenzie. I'm with Congresswoman Abigail Spanberger's office. I am not a county resident, but I'm here to just introduce myself, let people know that due to redistricting, Caroline and therefore Bowling Green are now in the 7th district, which the Congresswoman represents. We're very excited to do so, and we are just here to serve. So please let us know if you have an issue with a federal agency, be it the VA, Social Security, IRS, anything. Please reach out to us. We'd love to assist you. If the town or the county are applying for federal grants, we'd love to write a letter of support. And we just want to be here to help. Please let us know of any events. I saw that you're having an unveiling of the love sign on the 11th. I would love to be there. And we just want to know what's going on. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
It's going to be changed, but go ahead.
Oh, okay. Thanks for letting me know. We're going to be out and about, just getting to know everyone in the county and the town as much as we can. And please let us know how we can be of service. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else have a public comment? I thought checking on Bonnie there. All right, having nobody else have a public comment, we will move on to member comments. Jean, if you have anything you'd like to say?
I would like to thank Allison for all the extra hard work she's been doing during difficulties of transitions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to thank staff too for basically the same thing and helping me with the research for the stuff I was putting together during the work session.
Okay. Just to mention what Ms. Heidelbach had said, we were supposed to have the unveiling of our love sign on February 11th. You may have gotten a notice. We have to change that due to weather conditions that has prevented us from completing our concrete pour. So as soon as that's done, we will give you a final date and for the unveiling. Thank you. And thanks to staff and all the extra work that they're doing as well.
I don't have anything. Thank you.
Okay.
I just want to thank you, staff, too. I know they said Allison, but Trish and Judy, thanks for all the extra time you're putting in. I want to welcome everybody that's here tonight. We're here to listen to you, whatever you got, see if we can't resolve things for you and go from there. Thanks for coming.
I just want to say thanks also to all the departments that are represented here.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to staff reports and presentations. Councilman, Board of Supervisors, Mr. Seeley will be giving us a 2023 State of Caroline County address of some sort. If you'd like to approach the podium, we do have materials he has handed out for us.
I have handed out a bunch of things, and I also have a PowerPoint slide. And I just want to thank council for the opportunity tonight to speak about county government. Since my election in 2008, as part of my campaign promise, I have held 2 constituent meetings a year in different locations to educate our citizens on how local government works and to encourage participation. While we talk about other issues, my emphasis has always been on budget because a county that has a handle on the budget can better forecast and provide for citizens. I do this in layman's terms because we talk about budget terms and people many times get lost in just the vocabulary. So I try to make this easy for everybody to understand, and I just thought it would be good for town council to hear, if you're interested, now you all live in the county, I'm sure you are, David's looking at me laughing, about the budget, and I'd also gonna talk about other things like business development and broadband. I don't know how many of you read online, but everybody, broadband's a big deal, but we have a lot of business opportunities coming. I'd like to talk about those tonight. For years, I did this on big flip charts. I have recently migrated this to PowerPoint, and this is my second time doing this tonight. David, you were at Roma's the night I did it for the Ruitons. They were my guinea pigs. So this is a new rendition of how I'm hoping to actually do constituent meetings. I have also handed out a number of things, but one of the things you have is my end of the year newsletter, which provides much more detail of everything I'm going to talk about tonight. And please feel free to stop me anywhere through the presentation to talk about anything that's of interest. This being interactive is probably more important than just what the information is. So if you have a question, just stop me and we'll talk about it there. Can you go to the next slide, Jeff? This is just an agenda, understanding the county budget, revenue sources, business development and growth, and community priorities. Can we go to the next slide? Let me talk about some budget terms. These are things you hear at board meetings and read about. The general fund, just liken it to your checking account. That's what the general fund really is to the county. The utility fund is probably the most unique because we keep all the utility debt in one account. So you'll see that in some of the other charts. The utility fund is separate and is supposed to be self-supporting, but is not always. The unencumbered balance, this is probably one of the most misunderstood pieces in the budget. Think about the unencumbered balance as your savings account. It is money that you need, that is put away for in case you need it. Capital projects. Think about wanting to do an addition to your house, planning for that, and we have a capital projects budget that we look at and rearrange by year, but that is things that are out, lie out in time and that we're gonna get to at some point, but that's kind of like doing an addition to your house. One-time money. Think about that as a bonus. You don't get it every year as pay, but you get it once in a while and you have to decide how you're gonna handle that. Unfunded mandates. We're going to talk about these, but there are things that other governmental agencies actually place on us that we have to pay for that no money is provided to pay for it. Primary sources of revenue for the county. Let me start with comparing localities because in Caroline, if we raise real estate 1 cent, we raise $316,000. We get compared to all kinds of localities around the region. So I just picked one. 1 cent of real estate in Spotsylvania generates $1.7 million. Huge. We'd have to raise taxes 5 cents to keep up with 1 cent of them. People always, I don't know why we're paying taxes. This method is established by the Virginia General Assembly by statute to pay for services locally so they don't have to. So it's mandated. on how we pay for all the services that county government provides. And our two main sources are real estate and personal property. Another thing people tend to forget, the county has two paydays a year, June and December. You've got to exist between two paydays. And the current tax rate is 77 cents per hundred. Let's talk a little bit about Caroline. Caroline is the 11th largest county in the state of Virginia. It's the only county to lie in both the Piedmont and the Tidewater. You hear this from new people all the time on the western side of the county. To drive from Western Caroline to Port Royal takes more like an hour. I have 45 minutes. Most new people don't even realize Port Royal's in Caroline County. Don't have any concept. They live in the I-95 corridor and don't venture out. Yep, 77,000 acres, Fort A.P. Hill. Most of us probably realize that. The county is drained by 5 rivers. The majority of the county is zoned rural agriculture and rural preservation. Our primary growth area is on the I-95 corridor where we have utilities. The number one reason for people moving to Caroline is the rural nature. Participating in local government. We have some folks tonight that are attending. It's a great way to learn. Just like you guys, you can check our agenda online. Everything that's in our board packet is online. The agenda that I get on paper looks like this. It's online, and this is a board packet. Just to give everybody some idea what this looks like, this is what we get to read beforehand. Go ahead, Jeff. Let me start with the good news. 2018, Caroline was named among the top 10 in the state of localities who most effectively use their tax dollars. 2018 was the first year that Caroline's ever had a bond rating. We got a AA bond rating that year. Next slide. Before we look too far forward, I want to look back a little bit and tell you where we're coming from so that you can see where we're going to. When I was first elected in 2008, I found the county budget in the red. We made payroll on a credit card, and regular operations and salaries were paid by credit. We had millions of dollars in loans that were financed over and over again. We had interdepartmental loans that were never repaid. We had no unencumbered balance. We also received a letter from the state saying that we could no longer join the state borrowing. 2014, in 2011, 2012, 2013, we got a new county administrator and 2 new board members. So 2014 is a line in the sand. I've got the general fund debt, utility debt, school debt. I just want everybody to remember that $210 million in debt in 2014. Let me talk a little bit about unfunded mandates before we go too far. There are 3 types of unfunded mandates. Those passed by legislation by the Virginia General Assembly, and let me just point out we're a Dillon Rule state. We can only do what the General Assembly tells us we're allowed to do. So there are things that we can't create our own tax. There's a lot of things we can't do unless we get it by statute from the General Assembly. Second unfunded mandate is federal legislation. They changed all the frequencies they were selling at the federal level, so we lost our fire and rescue and public safety frequencies. We had to buy a new radio system, $6.3 million. There were no federal funds for that. We had to do that locally, an example. And the last one is an unfunded mandate that's dictated by citizens or voters when they affirm a project via referendum on a ballot. So you remember we went to a school referendum back in 16 or 17 for $25 million. We had to raise taxes to cover that. So that is the third way that you get an unfunded mandate, but it's voted on by the folks in the county and we move forward. 2017, better practice results. And remember the word better practice because we're going to get there. The unencumbered balance in 2017 is almost $17 million. Remember that number. Let's move to the next slide. Let's talk a little bit about best practices for bringing the budget back in line. We cut unnecessary spending and borrowing. We repaid and closed the line of credit for operations. We halted unwise borrowing and interest-only borrowing, which there was a number of. We started paying cash when able and not financing items like police cars and school buses. Saving of one-time money, which we'll talk about later, but think about this as, again, your bonus at your job that will not be repeated in the future. We began to develop new revenue sources by concentrating on business and commercial development versus residential. Income from business is an extra revenue engine. And it keeps citizens from having to pay taxes to pay for services. We needed a better business area, and the 639 road project, which we'll talk about later, was the beginning of that. But take a look at the note. Houses are really revenue negative for the county because of the services that are provided. Property taxes do not cover the cost of a single student in school typically. You know, the county share of one student in school is $3,700. That doesn't account for landfill operations, fire and rescue, sheriff's office. Property taxes alone cannot support services. Next. Bond rating and the unencumbered balance. Let me just say that the bond rating and the unencumbered balance are tied together. The county must keep between 12 and 17% of the overall budget in the unencumbered balance. And that is, we get audited every year by 2 agencies to keep our bond rating. First thing they look at. So let me talk a little bit about the unencumbered balances since 2017, because there's some interesting notes along the way here. You see 2017, 2018. Notice 2019, we go from almost 18 million to almost 17 million. We drop a whole %. We went into the unencumbered balance by $1.1 million in the budget that year, which was unfortunate. But I want to look closer at the unencumbered balance in 2021. Note that it goes up $5 million from 20 to 21. This actually happened in spite of us dipping into the unencumbered balance by $800K. Jeff, go to the next slide. This was offset by COVID money. We were able to pay fire and rescue in the sheriff's office through COVID funds and save that budgeted number into the unencumbered balance. But also in 2021, if you'll go one more slide, we got another interesting unfunded mandate. And let me tell everybody what this means. The General Assembly said that they were giving schools a 5% raise and the sheriff's office a 5% raise. And it was a 3 for 2. They would give the localities 3% if they would kick in 2%. Sounded okay, except for the sheriff's office, it was only the comp board salaried employees, which is less than half. And for school, it was only the SOQ salaried employees, less than half. So the 3 for 2 became a huge financial burden on the county in 2021. That was a huge unfunded mandate that on the surface, all everybody heard was schools and the sheriff's office are getting 5% raises. Nobody realized the 3 for 2 and the small percentage of employees that actually covered. Dan, you got a question? You look like, okay. So unfunded mandate from the state, hugely expensive. So as everybody in local government, we need to take a look at what that means overall to us. And it caught a lot of local governments by surprise. Next slide. Number one question, you see this on Facebook all the time. Does the county have a surplus? They have all this money in the general fund. The unencumbered balance is huge. Well, every time the budget goes up, schools get a raise. Schools got a bunch of state money last year, over $5 million. As the budget goes up, the percentage of the budget we have to save goes up as well. Doesn't always compute with everybody, but we have to maintain that 12 to 17% in the unencumbered balance year over year. And as the budget goes up, that amount of money goes up as well. So though there's been savings and people see that, again, we have departments that underspend their budget, that goes into the unencumbered balance. It's one-time money because they're probably not going to underspend it that much next year. It just depends how things hit. Let's go to the next slide. Let's talk about a little bit about results. 2014, we're going to talk about a $210 million debt. 22, 23, $167 million debt. We have a AA bond rating. We also have a Government Finance Officers Association certification of achievement for excellence in financial reporting. First time the county's ever had that. But let me show you what we got while reducing the debt. Schools represent the largest portion of the county budget. The overall appropriation has increased from 20% in 2014 to 51% in 2022. We're purchasing 5 new school buses a year cash. We did a renovation on the high school and Madison Elementary School, and those are just a couple of projects that we've done at the school's cash. Next slide. We've also added 3 additional resource officers. I don't know if everybody realizes the General Assembly mandated, another unfunded mandate, 1 resource officer per school. We took care of that in, I think, 2018. We currently have a school capital improvements budget of $1 million, almost $2 million, constantly working on things. For those that don't know, we are finally going to move and build a new Sparta fire station. We've actually purchased a piece of property across from the old school on Sparta Road, which is up on top of the hill from the Sparta store. This relocation has been due for years. That fire station, since I've been on the board's been underwater twice. But again, we've purchased the land. Investment in new revenue sources and infrastructure. The 639 road project, everybody kind of know what I'm talking. If you've driven down 639 to 95, you see the road being tore up and being worked on. That was a smart scale project that the board applied for. We were able to get 21 million if we'd put up 6 million, which is what the cost of that road improvement project is between I-95 and Route 1. This is a ready-made business and commercial growth area. This is where we're hoping to actually build business in a ready-made area, which will also bring business and keep taxes lower because it's a business base, not a base that requires additional tax dollars to support it. Utility upgrades. We've had to do a number of projects. We've had to actually increase the wastewater line size from the western side of the county. We borrowed the money for that a year and a half ago. We're in the process of actually hoping to start construction on that this spring. You can go to the next one, Jeff. Let me talk a little bit about the new EMS positions and infrastructure for public safety. In this past year's budget, now, everybody realizes we're building a Carmel Church fire station. I hope everybody's heard that. So that's going to be Station 10. It's right across from McKesson, in case anybody hasn't seen it. We are going to add 19 new full-time positions in fire and rescue that will facilitate that station being 24/7. In 2019, we've been trying to add 10 new sheriff's cars a year. fell a little short in 19, I think, supply chain issues. And in 20, we really hit some supply chain issues and missed the mark. So we've been pushing those forward to try to get all these vehicles lease purchased and new, because as you know, the 11th largest county, there's a lot of miles going on a sheriff's vehicle. We've also bought 2 new fire engines and a ladder truck. Not to mention, we've just replaced the last old ambulance that we've had. So we've spent in the last couple of years, we've had a lot of emphasis, which has also been one of my priorities, of getting rid of the old equipment that we had. When I came to the board, every fire truck was 15 years or older. When we got rid of the Port Royal fire truck 3 years ago, it was 33 years old. These are the investments in the last 2 years, and I'll just let everybody take a look at that, but this has been where we're heading. When I first came to the board, a new ambulance was about $140,000. The one we're replacing this year, I think, is like $240,000. So they're steadily going up, and a fire truck, as Arthur can tell you, is over $600,000 now. There was a day when they were in the upper 3s, low 400s. They're over $600,000. So it's not been an easy climb, but we're slowly getting a lot of this replaced. Next slide. Broadband. The VATI grant, that is the Virginia's system for grants for actually providing broadband to rural areas. We have a VATI grant in that we were hoping we would know the result of in January. They're now telling us March. But we have our portion in cash ready to match. We have 2 providers that are actually in our VATI grant that are doing the bidding for local service. So we have that in cash ready to go. We're just waiting to hear whether or not we've won or not. Next slide. Here are some other investments, and let me just point out, has anybody been around behind the county admin building? You'll see we're doing an addition back there. That is a new state mandate. You know, we've gone to 45 days early voting. And if anybody saw the line around county admin in the last two elections, because of the 45-day early voting, we really didn't have restrooms for those folks, and we didn't really have any place. Anybody who's been to the registrar's office knows that it's really tight going in and out of there. That addition on the back will be for early voting, because it starts 45 days early. And that was something that was an unfunded mandate. They've mandated 45 days early voting, but didn't really provide a way to do that. Next slide. Ongoing priorities and new projects, and these are priorities that I have, which I'm just going to cover a couple of them. If you go to the next slide. Broadband has been a county-wide, you'll see it everywhere. If you get online, everybody, when are we getting broadband? Oh, we're never getting it. We're not in this region. We're not in that region. The federal government has actually got funds for areas that aren't covered with the normal VATI grant kinds of things where the density is really, really not high enough. We are working diligently in this VATI grant to cover those areas. And I'm going to go to the next slide, Jeff. We have a fabulous broadband committee made up of citizens. And in my newsletter, you'll see all the folks mentioned that have actually done a lot of heavy lifting for the Board of Supervisors. I'm on the broadband committee. I'm one of 2 supervisors on it, but this committee has made all the difference in the world. People just don't realize how much work they have done. And I just want to say congratulations to them. Support for smart business. The key to smart business growth is compatible business, which brings revenue and jobs to the county. I want to say that's my last bullet. But go back a second. 2021 and 2022 have been stellar years for business announcements in the county. And if you take a look in the newsletter in part 2, you'll see a number of business announcements. We are moving in the right direction. The businesses take a long time to build out. There's nothing fast. And I'll show you a project at the end, but we are moving in the right direction. This is a page out of the comprehensive plan just to reiterate The majority of the county is rural preservation or agricultural preservation, and you see the growth areas delineated up there, and they're around the I-95 corridor. But there are, if you go to the next slide, Jeff, there are compatible businesses in rural and agricultural preservation. And there has been a lot of interest in agribusiness and wedding venues in the rural areas on larger tracts of land. We have seen a lot of people buy things. They're upgrading them and moving in that direction. The primary growth areas in Western Carolina, we've spent a lot of money over there on utilities and infrastructure, and that's where the commercial and business growth are naturally going to occur. Let's talk about small business and Main Street. Bowling Green and Port Royal have really successfully navigated the pandemic. If you look at the main streets of both, you'll see a lot of interesting things that have come about in the last couple of years. Randy's on Main Street every day, a Main Street business. He can tell you looking down the street the differences he's seen in the last couple of years. Next slide. But small business is the important engine creating revenue and overall and revenue over and above real estate taxes. So I do want to applaud some of the new businesses up there. I found it interesting. I found a good picture of Joey's business. It just wasn't with Joey in it. So next slide. Public safety plan. We have lagged behind for a number of years with public safety and pay scales. And the last time I was chair, I worked hard with county staff and the sheriff's office and fire and rescue to actually come up with a pay scale and steps for those offices. It is going to be fire and rescue and the sheriff's office are going to be harder and harder to hire, and I think that's an emphasis we're going to have to keep, and we're going to have to keep an eye on it. But it has been a real pet project of mine for the last 2 years. One of the biggest misconceptions, and again, I'll just go to online, is the Board of Supervisors also makes decisions for school boards. School boards are autonomous. The only decision boards of supervisors make for schools and school boards is we fund 6 broad categories that they bring to us. They get to allocate the money. We do not get to tell them where to spend it. As you all know, school boards are elected separately and are autonomous. Next slide. Most of you may or may not know I spent 8 years on the school board. I have spent a good bit of time. I still serve as a science fair judge at the elementary school. For those that don't know, I keep bees, so I do a honeybee class for the elementary schools. And I've supported the ROTC events and support the Cavaliers football team. We provide a meal for them every year, so anybody interested, it's gotten kind of catchy, so getting a date now is getting harder and harder, which is a good thing. They deserve support, and it's always interesting to meet the players before the game. Community activities. Caroline has a number of really nice and fairly large events every year. The Caroline Agricultural Fair, everybody knows, is 4 days, which is growing and growing and growing. Harvest Festival has really grown and continues to grow. The Board of Supervisors supports that. It's something that I'm at every year. Anybody who hasn't been to a 4th of July in historic Port Royal, I really encourage you to go and see it. They do a fabulous job every year. And the veterans recognition, it is a shame that the veterans organizations in Caroline have dwindled smaller and smaller. So Veterans Day and Memorial Day has sort of fallen to a few of us, but we continue to hold those ceremonies on the courthouse lawn. And speaking of the courthouse lawn, I know I got a lot of complaints about the trees that we cut. It was cut them or have them fall on the old courthouse, which would have been just terrible. So as you can see, we've We've cut it down. We have fixed all the sidewalks. We've replaced the trees. We've put some irrigation in just to keep these trees alive. If you'll notice, all the way up to one side of the courthouse going to the museum entrance, those are all new trees. The mural is coming back. It was actually deteriorated inside the enclosure, so that's being photographed and getting it reprinted, and it's going back up. And the Civil War's trail signs are coming back. Just a couple of things of interest. The tax rate remained the same in 2022. Everybody saw it was interesting what happened with vehicles. We were all caught. I think every locality in the state was caught last year with what happened to the price of used cars. We have to use a national company to do personal property assessment. We use J.D. Powers. We go to the next slide, Jeff. I think that'll. In order to bring down the actual cost to all the citizens, we got rid of the Virginia license tax. Remember, we all used to pay $30 for the sticker that went on the window. That was, if you didn't pay your $30, you didn't get the sticker, you couldn't drive. That's gone. And $25 for motorcycles. And we did reduce the rate from $380 to $350. It still wasn't, it's still the value of vehicles and the assessed value still was high. The values are coming down this year and they're probably going to continue to come down. But we looked at this many different ways. The real interesting thing is if you look at the value of vehicles, the more we cut the rate, the less expensive the newer vehicles were, but it didn't do anything for the low-end vehicles, just the way that curve falls. It's sort of a straight line. The more you cut, you got to 2016s and everything below that stayed super inflated. There was no good way to do that. We looked at it. We're going to look at it again this year. Next slide. Everybody should have got a new voter card this year. Redistricting has happened, as we heard earlier. It also redistricted part of the counties because we did a census and the population shifted around in the county. Reedy Church and Bowling Green actually didn't increase in size, actually got a little bit smaller. Port Royal sort of held its own, but Madison, Western Caroline, and Mattaponi all grew. So if you look at the Port Royal district, it now wraps all the way around to Route 1. Bowling Green goes all the way up to Woodford Road, and all the other districts got a little smaller. Rappahannock water withdrawal permit. Let's spend a little time here. We are in the last phase of testing, and we should get the report in March or April as to what the last, and it's some study for eggs and all kinds of other things for fish. Once we get this last permit hurdle cleared, we will then go through a process. I don't have an answer. Somebody asked me on council, was the letter accepted? We won't know. They're going to do an evaluation for us in March when we get this last study in. We will then, that whole package will go to DEQ. And then at the end of that process, and I don't know how many months that's going to take, we will then should have a permit to actually put a grate in the water just above Skinker's Necks where our intake permit's going to be. We are anxiously awaiting for that to happen. Once we put a grate in the water, we don't even have to withdraw water, but a grate in the water fences off our allocation for water there. So we are very close to that and are hoping to have that answer probably by the middle to the end of summer is my best guess. But it is on track to be complete. And I can't tell you what we've spent on this, but it is something that we've been working on for 8 years. I will say, take a look at part 2 of the newsletter. The number of projects and amount of property that's been sold for large projects is steadily growing. And it takes time for those Go one more slide, Jeff, I think, and we'll stop here. This is the Flint Development Company. This is going to be Trader Joe's. It's 1.1 million square feet. They actually put a concrete mixing plant on site, and we're mixing and pouring almost 24 hours a day, laying the floor. If you have not seen it, the size of the building is just mind-boggling. That is it, about 2/3 under roof. They should be open, I would think, sometime next year, because I think they're a year away. They actually have to do refrigerator and freezer upgrades in that building, but it's a $70 million investment and should bring 500 new jobs to the county. And I think that's my last slide. It is at Carmel Church, behind McKesson. If you go past McKesson, it's on the left. I know that took a little long, but there was just, I didn't know what to chop out. Questions, anybody? Great. Sure.
I mean, can you speak to any capital improvement projects that may be, in the works right now that would affect the town?
You mean county-wise?
Yeah.
The biggest one probably right now is the addition on the back of the county admin building, because it is right in town. Again, that's just to facilitate voting at this point in time. Other than that, we've done a bunch of parks and rec upgrades. All the ball fields have been resanded. We have a pretty vibrant baseball high school team that plays out at Parks and Rec, and we're doing lights on the tennis courts. Those are the kinds of projects that are going on right now. You got something else in mind? I mean, that's...
I was just wondering if there was anything that we weren't aware of, or just anything that you could talk to on that. I guess the biggest one, you kind of hit on it already, but wanted an update on the water withdrawal permit, and I think you covered that. But I mean, your best guess on, we were helping to participate in that. I mean, when would the town, could they expect to have water? With that, I mean, is that still are we 10, 15, 20, or do you think that timeline is starting to shrink a little bit?
With some of the economic development projects, see, again, we talked about being in the Tidewater, being actually in the Tidewater and in the Piedmont. So being in the Piedmont gives us the ability to drill wells in bedrock and extract water. So for the growth area, right now, that they're subsiding on wells, but you're an engineer, you draw water through rock long enough, it collapses. So you go from a 200 gallon a minute well on Friday to a 3 gallon a minute well on Monday. And then you're like a new well, having the well site you're looking at about $100,000 investment. We're looking at planning some of those. But we are looking to how do we get the water quality alone. When you look at the water quality coming out of bedrock, it's really hard water. We're running it through huge green sand filters, and we're doing some to it, but the water quality is not the water quality we have in Bowling Green. I mean, that aquifer is far above and beyond anything you're going to get out of rock. So there is there's motivation among a lot of board members to move forward with that, getting the permit and then figuring out what it's going to cost. Once we know that the permit's there, we've already have an engineering firm looking at some stuff. We're looking at land because we've got to have a pump station and that kind of stuff. And landowners do not want anything to cross their land. It's really been interesting. But we're working through that process early so that when we do get the permit and we do have the ability to move forward, that we're going to be ready. It's not like, okay, now we can, let's start planning. We're working on pieces of that now.
As you're pulling water from the Rappahannock, I guess it needs to be processed, and we need to have a water treatment plant. I mean, that's not going to be there at the river.
Oh, no. We would ship, well, you don't want to, water gets stale in pipes. So you don't want to pull water and actually actually do all the work on it there. You want to get that water work done as close to the users as possible. So I think that's going to open up, and we're going to start looking at where would that be, because there are a lot of options once that happens. I don't know what all those options are. We haven't started to look at that. Our biggest concern is, can we get the permit? Because it's anytime you start down that path, it all costs money. So we're looking at, okay, once we get the grate in the water, what's that going to cost? Get that done. Then we're looking at land to come across to across 17. What's that going to cost? We're looking at all those costs, and then we're going to we're actually working on building a bigger plan. So it's a process.
Oh, I know it is.
And I can't say, in 25, we're going to have this done, because I don't know yet.
We've been working through with the EQ, and we've had, our water scare, and, not exactly knowing how much capacity we're going to have with our wells.
Right.
As that water is shipped over, wherever it goes and wherever it's treated, I'm assuming eventually it's going to make its way back to Bowling Green. And I'm just wondering I just kind of wanted to get a sense of your thoughts. And you're representing this area
right.
on the board. What are you doing to ensure that we're going to have the water that we need in the future?
There are a lot of plans. There's a lot to take place between now and then. We're going to have to put a water plant where it makes the most sense. And we've got the same well problem you do on this side. Everything this side of Polecat Creek is in the Tidewater Basin. So the high school, Milford, the town of Bowling Green, the town of Port Royal, everybody's in this Tidewater Basin. Port Royal's in the water permit with us. King George is in the water permit with us. The town of Bowling Green, I'm hoping all this gets connected with DEQ in the final permit, because we're going to have to provide water to all those places. So it's going to be interesting where we do that, because as everybody knows, there's a lot of different ways to move water around depending on what we spend. So it's going to come to a point of where do we store water, and where do we do the actual water plant? And we're just not that close yet. Once we get the grate in the water and we start to look at what our options are and what our route for water is going to be, because that's something else yet to still be worked out. AP Hill's between all of us and the river. So that's something that's going to have to come across there as well. And where's the best place for that? I don't know that we know that yet. So some of that will all play a role in all of this.
I appreciate the update. I know it's a moving target, and you've
really
been working on it a long time.
I've got some ideas, and the problem with ideas is if you start to talk about them, everything on the table gets shifted around.
Sure.
I'm just sitting tight, waiting for. I just want to see the grate go in the water, to be honest with you, because that is the starting line for us at that point.
Secures our position there. Yeah.
Yep.
I appreciate you coming and giving us an update, and very informative. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
I got one thing to add for your question for the capital improvement. The county's invested $1.4 million in fire apparatus in the town over the last 36 months. And then the volunteers have invested about 500. So it was just shy of $2 million in a 36-month time period directly focused here in town of improvements for fire and rescue equipment alone. That's not counting ambulances. It's strictly fire.
I was going to say fire trucks, because there's 2 coming to Bowling Green.
There was always talk about redoing the fire station. And is there any update on any of that?
I don't want to overstep Jeff's positioning on that. I've had direct conversation with the county fire chief, and yes, his goal is to secure a piece of land for a new fire station within the next 5 years, in hopes for the town's replacement station, since that's, I think, dates back to the 70s.
Would that stay in town, or?
It would, if it's not directly in the town, it's going to be in very close proximity. I don't know where that would be, but the goal is, yes, very, very close.
Since he's the fire chief, he gets, I talked to the chief. We've talked about a fire station. It's perplexing where it would go.
One why wouldn't it stay right where it is just with upgrades? Is there not enough room to do what you need to do, or just?
With the plans for the Carmel Church and the Sparta Station, I think, you know, we would almost be, you're probably looking at a 24-month time frame to build said station. So you would have to, if you put it here, you'd almost have to level it, start over. There's a lot of, I would say, concerns here with this, just being that the structure's old. You know, rooms for improvement or expansion would have to be up in the air here because of the footprint. So we've looked and tried to identify places, and the goal is to keep it within the town limits.
David?
Thank you. I did have a question. We were talking earlier. I was curious. So how does the county handle, so water and sewer availability fees, when you collect that from a new home being built, does that go in your utility fund, or does it go in a account for upgrades, or what?
The debt service on utilities is not, the last 2 years we've been able to actually pay, and it was on one of my slides, I should have read it. We've actually been able to pay utility debt the last 2 years with connection fees. Typically, we don't collect enough in connection fees to pay the utility debt and some of the maintenance. So it just depends on the year. You know, the last 2 years have really been good. Before that, we were spending anywhere from 1.1 to 800,000 to 1.2 million out of the general fund to pay utility debt. So connection fees are one time, I had up there one time, it's like a bonus. It's one-time money. It's not something we can count on. So we've put money in utilities, particularly for the west side of the county, the 639 road project, with those businesses coming and being able to collect on those as actual revenue sources, will offset some of this. But we've had to spend a lot of money up front for utilities, and it's just taken a lot longer to pay back than we thought. So connection fees are really but
y'all don't spend those as just like money to pay out the electric bill. It goes to utilities.
It goes utility, and that's why there's a separate utility fund.
Right.
And a lot of times we spend, like I said, it comes out of the general fund to pay utility debt because we haven't collected enough, which is, for all the small localities, that's a problem. How do you collect enough? How do you get enough revenue to pay the utility debt and take care of customers? Because you can't burden all the customers with all of that debt and that rate, because you're trying to bet on the back end that you're going to entice other commercial development with it. Well, thank you for the time tonight. I know I went a little long. I'm glad you don't have a lengthy agenda, but I just thought this would catch everybody up. And this is typically what I do for constituents. And again, the newsletter has a lot of this and probably even a little more in depth. But thank you all.
Thank you, Mr. Sealing. Very informative. We appreciate your time.
Where is the newsletter?
It's, that's not that. No. That's it. There's two sets of it. There were actually two sets.
Okay,
Moving along, we're going to staff reports, Public Works.
The only things I want to say, thank you to Justin. We got a couple holes filled on Anderson Avenue, and then Trish and Judy have been making phone calls to anybody that's had a potential leak at their house. So that's all I have.
Any questions for Josh?
I just want to thank you, Josh, for getting those holes filled and also taking care of that easement on the south side of my house where all those trees come down.
You're welcome.
That was threatening a lot of things there. So, but thank you. It looks really good through there too.
All right, thank you. Next up, Police Department, Chief Cecil.
Hey, I have nothing, so we have nothing new going on. Everything's going good, so.
Questions for Chief Cecil? All right.
No, I want to thank you, Justin, because I think you guys going out and doing the walkthrough to businesses and coming in and asking us, is there anything going on? Is everything okay? I think that's superb because you don't get that in a lot of communities.
Yep.
And it's greatly appreciated.
That's no problem.
Thank you so much. Stay safe. Town Treasurer, Finance? Okay, Town Administration, Town Manager, please.
So if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Well, rocking. Okay, no questions. That ends our staff reports and presentations. We move on to consent agenda.
I'd like to make a motion to remove number 7 from the consent agenda. Motion.
There's typos in both.
Okay. I was going to say to correct the changes already discussed with staff prior to the meeting. That would be the reason.
And I know she's corrected and put them in here, so.
Oh, they already.
So can we move to motion because she's corrected them and put them in here, or?
The new ones have some typos as well, if we want to correct
Oh.
those.
Don't know what they are. Do you want to share that with us?
Well, we would do vote on one at a time, but, okay, if we go to
Madam
the.
Vice Mayor, if there's typos, might I suggest that perhaps the minutes be postponed until next month, and then the typos can be privately communicated?
Okay. Do we have, do I need a motion for that to extend to next? Okay.
Move on to the bills.
All right, then we will move on to number 8, the bills, and the minutes will be moved to next month, and we'll approve them at that time. Okay, motion to approve the bills.
So moved.
Second,
I'll second it.
Jeff has made a motion, Randy has second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Moving on to no unfinished business, we do have new business. Consideration of new water permit application, information by town manager.
Madam Vice Mayor and members of the Town Council, at the last meeting, Stantec gave, our consultant gave some information about the possibility of having more groundwater. And so there was interest from the Town Council on pursuing a new permit. I did talk to Stantec and for them to work on our behalf to apply for a permit. The ballpark is $20,000, and the DEQ fee is $9,000. What they do for that is they do the entire permit application with the attachments. They provide the justification and evaluation of use and demands. They provide alternatives analysis and evaluation of the water sources, and they do a water conservation and management plan. I did ask them about the possibility of a joint application with the county, just in case the county decided they wanted to do that. They said that the two systems would need to be interconnected in order to do that. So that's always a future option if the county wants to come and pursue that with us. They did say, I did ask about the penalty, and they said it's not an actual fee. What it is that whatever is left over in your permit, let's say we have 2 years left over, then that is foregone, and then we would be paying the $9,000 for a new permit, which would then start the permit when we received it. So it's not an actual dollar amount. It's just that we paid whatever we paid for the last permit, and so whatever portion of that permit we don't use would be forgone. And so, again, as I said in the work session, they haven't gotten the new updated model information from DEQ, so they're not finished yet with what we already have them working on, but that will be forthcoming as quickly as possible. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them or come back with more information, but I know that this was a critical issue at one point, and so it's before you.
Discussion?
It is still a critical issue. We need to decide what we're going to do about getting more water, if it's available. But do we need to wait for Stantec to get back with us on this next model to make sure how much we can draw? Because we need to put in the permit for what our maximum amount we can draw. That way we can go forward with the projects that's been put before us in the last 6 months to make sure we got plenty of water.
So if, I appreciate council, obviously before I got on in January, I appreciate council hiring Stantec because, if there was an issue with the water, we needed to hire somebody professionally to give us advice on where exactly we stood. I enjoyed his presentation last month, and my takeaway from the presentation was that two things. We're flirting with our capacity. We're sometimes 80% of our permit the DEQ gave us, permitted amount. And obviously we need to ask to have that raised. I was also pleased, and I took away from his presentation that there is water in the ground that we can withdraw, and our wells are capable of doing that. So I think it's twofold. I think it was good to get that checkup from the doctor saying that the water is there. The scary thing was that we're getting close to our permit. I was also interested to know that when do we raise this thing? How many times we've raised it? We've never asked DEQ to raise it. It was just the one they assigned to us back when DEQ started doing it as opposed to the health department. So, it was our first amount that we ever got. And I think I would love to move ahead with, if they're the consultant to do it, which I was pleased with them, I would love to move ahead with, let's get the process going with DEQ, because it's not going to get any cheaper to do that. We have to do that, I think. So, with some more discussion, I would be in favor, if it's necessary, to make a motion to engage them, or if we need to get another bid from someone else. I don't know if we do.
I don't believe we have anybody else that's giving us another bid. Stantec is the only one. Is there any further discussion?
I mean, I'm in favor of moving forward as well. I think Stantec's the one to do it. Allison, you've been very happy with their performance, haven't you?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
They have a good relationship with DEQ, and so I think the permitting process will go much more smoothly because of that.
And what was the price for them to do the permit?
They said ballpark 20,000.
Ballpark, okay. Now that just billed on an hourly basis?
They'll give us a proposal. It includes everything for the cost.
So, from your perspective, what do we need to do if we as a council decided Stantec's the one we'd like to move forward? Do we need to get a proposal from them first?
So I can certainly bring a proposal back at the next meeting, or you can go ahead and direct staff to move forward on it if you want me to go ahead and sign it. But I'll bring it back to you, whether it's in the meeting or before.
I have no clue, maybe you can enlighten us, if that figure is competitive or not. I think the fellow that spoke last time, I think he was good. And
Ryan.
if he's done this study for us and knows our situation, who better to communicate it and plead our case to DEQ than that guy? So I'd like to make a motion that we move forward and ask staff to get them to give us a hard number, and let's get this process going.
I'd like to second that. Can I ask a friendly amendment real quick?
Sure.
Just to head off some possible concern, could we amend that to be a motion to direct staff to administer and build up the proposal to submit to them up to an amount of $20,000? And if it becomes higher than that, bring it back, but start the process.
And but it was something for DEQ, like 9,000 or something, so not including that, but yeah, I'd like to amend my motion.
Okay, I'll second that.
We have a motion on the table by David, seconded with an amendment by Jeff. All in favor?
I have discussion. I'll state that right off the bat. My concern with that is that, number one, our permit isn't due until 2028. So as I stated in the work session, I think we run the risk of 3 outcomes on that said permit. And I can elaborate if anyone has any questions on that. Where it may be increased, it may stay the same, or it may be brought down in the capacity rate. And number 2, by doing that 5 years early, we relinquish roughly $10,000 that we've already paid for that permit. And then also the county's initiative for ground surface water. It was stated in 2022 with DEQ officials here at Town Council that a renewal of our permit would require literature to state support of a alternative water source for the town. That's all I have.
Well, Arthur, you can feel free to elaborate. You know, we're on the stream now, so this is more the public record if you wanted to speak more to your points from earlier. On that last one, though, although, yes, as he stated, as Vasily stated earlier, hasn't necessarily been accepted yet, we did submit the letter supporting the surface water thing.
Yeah, my concern with waiting, and I thought DEQ alluded to this, and so did the consultant with Stantec, you know, if we happen to wait and someone jumps in front of us and asks, you know, for that water allocation and they get ahead of us, it could limit us. I don't think there's any chance they're going to decrease the permit because we're at 80% usage. I mean, they're in, you know, they want us to get the amount of water that we need and not more than we need. So I'd really like us to move forward.
Again, the modeling that they brought back at the last meeting showed successful testing at an increase of 75% of our current permit and successful testing at 100%. It did not pass 150%. That said, the concern is that DEQ had revised their modeling, so it was a little bit up in the air of what it would really be when measured against those new regs. I would be very surprised if it was like, you know, less than what we currently have, so I would think it would probably be somewhere in that 75 to 100. But that's what we had asked them to come back with as soon as they could.
Well, I think the good thing is that the water capacity is in the ground. You know, that we can ask for an increase because it is there. It's not that we've run out. We're just getting close to that limit. So, and I do recall also about other people getting in line ahead of us. So I definitely don't think not going now is an option, really.
I guess my concern is we partnered with this company to provide a comprehensive study on behalf of the town, and they came last month to give an update, but the study, in my opinion, is not 100% complete. So I just think that we're jumping the gun here on initiating the renewal process before completely retaining all the results of said study that we've already paid for. So that's where my standpoint's coming from.
Can I ask what you're considering is missing?
I mean, he's supposed to run extra figures that were provided from DEQ, and he stated that last month. So now we're going to go ahead and move forward with the water permit processed to DEQ, but we haven't finalized or received a final copy of the actual study that we initiated with the company in 2022. So it's, to me, it's, I don't have, I didn't actually, I got some documentation, but I don't think it was a turnkey report on behalf of that company to the town that we paid for officially. And then I agree that we need to make a agreement to fix the water problem or be proactive in fixing it, and I think we're on that path. I just think we haven't gotten the report back from the company that we partnered with in the middle part of 2022.
If that report from last time had been the final report and there were no outstanding, if DEQ had not revised their regulations, how would you have felt at that point? Would you have been more comfortable knowing that those were the solid numbers?
I'd say it's null and void because it's not, but I mean, if it wasn't the final report and he stated that, he stated.
Yeah, no, I mean, I shouldn't have even asked that. That would have been more an offline discussion with you, sorry. Would you be more comfortable waiting another month and having them come back?
I'm just providing discussion. We've already got a motion in a second.
Yeah, we haven't voted yet.
May I add something? I think that initially, when I went to Stantec, I said, I need to know if we can get well water. And then if we can't, then I need an analysis of a report of how we can get water. And so you are correct, and that we are paying them incrementally. So but we did sign a contract for a total amount, and I can't remember the amount, $10,000, I believe. So it's a valid question, and maybe I can ask them now that we know that we can get water, some well water, then can we roll over part of that contract into, because we're going in a different direction now. You know, that being said, part of the study was the different things like the Rappahannock River project and every single way that we could get water. So you're right, they haven't completed their work.
I guess the best way I can think of it is my state inspection's due in June, but I decided to pay out of pocket early just to get it re-inspected early. So essentially I'm wasting my funds that I've already paid. It's just on a larger scale, if that makes sense. That's where my mindset is.
If we go forward with this and do not give DEQ an alternative water source as they're requesting, what does that do for the permit? Does it put it in jeopardy? Do we have any kind of challenges with that?
The alternative water source is the Rappahannock River project. And I mean, my suggestion is we do that and move with the county on that as well. Just let's, definitely, we've tried to give the letter to DEQ that they needed so that we could be part of that project. I think we were finally successful at that. And so we are intending to partner with the county. They are, as was stated earlier by Supervisor Seeley, they are in their final stages, and I can get that report and submit it as part of our justification that, yes, we are a part of this project as well. So,
well, part of the rationale behind my motion was the full knowledge that we may ask Stantec to review alternate sources, but there's no way that the little town of Bowling Green would ever draw water out of the Rappahannock. My hope my wish would be, I think we've got an ox in the mire right now. We've got a little issue with water and a permit, and we need to get some more water out of the ground so we don't shut down growth. But as soon as the county hooks into the river, I want to jump right on board with him. I think we need to do this permit increase because as Jeff said, I mean, it's not unrealistic to think that it may be 10 years before we're drinking water out of the Rappahannock, correct? So I don't think this town can survive flirting with 80% to 100% of our DEQ permit during that 10 years. I just think we need to do it, get that nut cracked, and be ready to do away with our wells as soon as we can go on to the, the surface water, the river water.
And as a side note, a part of partnering with them is that if we don't want the water or for some reason can't afford the water, they get our share. So that's a good thing for the county.
How about not really another option, but another way of approaching it? Can we get Stantec out here for the next meeting?
Yes.
All right. So instead of formally approving the actual enacting of a contract, can we request a contract be ready to be implemented at the next meeting, as opposed to giving it away now? Be ready to go at the next meeting.
Mm-hmm.
But what exactly is the receivables we're missing on the report? Because why did he come and give us that report and give us all these?
The regulations, the DEQ modeling data changed in the interim of just the days before they came out. And it was DEQ sent out a notice saying, hey, we're going to revise how we do our testing.
Okay.
And so it was in limbo. He was already scheduled to come out. They had already done, their task of what they were contracted to do at the time. So they came and gave us that data. Ultimately, it probably won't change much, but it will change. And Arthur's right. It could change drastically. I certainly hope not. But yeah, it's not done. He's right.
So it may come back the absolute opposite of what he told us, that there is water out there to pull out.
It is possible.
Yeah, but he said the probability it's not going to change a whole lot.
Right.
But, one question I had, are we supposed to increase permit once we hit 80%, Josh? I mean, at what point, we have a permit of 69 million gallons, and at what point, because, we're right at the 80%, close to it now, right?
Yeah, usually it's 90%. They kind of call you up and say, hey, you probably need to evaluate it.
So, that would be one thing. We're getting close to that permit level. I think if we were at 50% of whatever we were permitted and that doesn't make any sense. But, Arthur, I would say that's why I think that, we're getting close. We need to make sure that we keep our position. And so we have the availability of water. We may decide that we don't use it as quickly as some people would like us to, but at least we have options are open. And I think it's a wise investment. Now to forego that little bit in order to secure the position. But 90 is the number, not 80.
Water's a little bit different. They kind of say 90% just because they want to account for any leaks, emergencies, different things like that. So they want to have that buffer in there. So 10% is usually what they kind of go by.
Okay.
Once you hit 90%, they want, a buffer. So if you have a major leak or something happens, that you have that buffer in there.
Okay. Thanks.
We were it's a little bit the difference of a verbal warning versus a written warning. That 90 is more the written. They were cautioning us now. There's nothing they're going to hit us with now.
You're saying they were cautioning us at 80%.
Yeah, both the Stantec fella and the DEQ fellas, when they showed up, were just hey, you need to think about it.
Yeah. You need to start planning now.
Yes.
Exactly.
Right. So, I think that's why we ought to do it, not wait till the end of whatever the permit length is.
I'm not saying wait till the 2028 to renew the permit. I'm saying we've got an incomplete report that we've paid for. We're waiting on the county's report back from DEQ, which we heard earlier, that would be in March. And that's just kind of where I'm at with it.
This is a really important topic for all of us. I would like to see us really be in unison through this whole thing. I'm certainly amenable to waiting another month if that could get us all the data, if we could get the engineer out here again, hoping that it's done. I don't want to put this off for long, though.
Well, we also are ballparking,
right.
For the motion, and we don't have a proposal in front of us, so that's
exactly. And I'm willing to wait another month for sure. Would the easiest way for me to be to retract my second? Or should we carry out the vote?
You can't retract.
All righty.
The maker of the motion can withdraw the motion.
I would stand with my motion the way it is, because I think that whatever the final report comes back, I mean, if it comes back and says, I made a huge mistake, y'all are just flat out of water. Of course, we're not going to raise DEQ, but I mean, then we'll be in big trouble. I think he gave us a pretty good report. I think it was pretty solid, other than tightening up a few things. I'm just not, with what I heard and what I understood the other night, I feel comfortable, and I'm going to keep the motion the way it is, and let's vote it up or down.
I mean, I respect that. I got an incomplete report. I don't have a proposal, and I think of the town's funds just like they're mine. And that's my standpoint, and I'm sticking to it. So we can call for the motion, I guess, if there's no further discussion.
So my 2 cents, I get the, with all of these situations with water, et cetera, it's basically first come, first serve. If we waited longer, we'd be at a junior applicant situation. But at the same time, for me, I am really needing facts. I need to see total numbers. I am in agreement with Arthur. We didn't get our final numbers. We did pay for that. I didn't hear him say we have so much water. I heard him say we have some availability. But for me, I'm just willing to wait as well. But again, I respect the rest of council and their comments.
Can I ask one more question? The different options that were just talked about, the vote that we're about to take, to enter into a contract, and then the other idea that I floated out about having one prepared, ready to go. Is there really much of a time difference in those two options? Like,
are you asking me?
No, I was looking towards staff. Like, if we were to compel you to enter into a contract right now, would that really even take place before our next meeting anyway?
I can bring you the contract, I can bring you everything, Nick.
My point being, let me just say hypothetically, what if I were to amend my motion that said, let's move forward, let's engage Stantec to go to DEQ, with the exception of if something huge happens and we get this final report, because it's going to take a while to do all this. Finish up your report, get us the answers. If there's something earth-shattering in there, we pull the plug on it. I don't know what that would be, but if that gives you a little more comfort.
If you're talking about signing a contract I haven't seen, so I don't know about the ability to pull the plug. I would like to add that one of the governor's important initiatives has been to move permitting applications more quickly through DEQ. And I don't know whether that weighs into your consideration at all. It used to be, like we would file something with DEQ and sort of wait for our grandchildren to arrive. But I mean, the governor has really, he's got big ambitions about shortening the time.
Andrea, what is your recommendation?
Thanks, Ms. Davis. I agree with kind of what both sides are saying. I do think we need to move forward. However, I also feel like we've contracted for and paid for something that we haven't gotten. We do seem to be pleased with the quality of Stantec and the fact that they have a good relationship with DEQ. So, as an attorney, I'm a little uncomfortable moving forward with a contract that I haven't personally seen, because as Mr. Stork said, well, if it ends up being something we didn't anticipate, we can pull the plug. I just don't know if it gives us that flexibility.
Well, so why did he come and give a presentation last month?
I think because a lot of people were talking about wanting to know what was going on with them. It had really kind of been a while.
So when y'all put out this contract to them, what was the time frame they had?
90 days.
I think it was shorter
3
than
months,
it's turned
wasn't it?
out to be.
The thing is, but if I.
Intended to be shorter than it's turned
He
out
come
to
up
be.
here last month to give us the report. Everything was a go, except for there was a new model being run, and he wanted to see the results of that. All right, if DEQ didn't run a new model, we wouldn't be having this conversation right now.
Yeah,
I mean, he already said we're at, correct me if I'm wrong, around 120 million gallons we can draw instead of the 69 that we're drawing. That was on the low side. So he just wanted to see what the new model was. So if there wasn't no new model that DEQ was going to run, we would not be talking about this right now.
Well, no, I think it wasn't Allison, correct me if I'm wrong. Was that as the final report?
Supposed to be, I'm really searching for our contract right now, but I believe it's supposed to be 3 reports. He's done 2. There was 1 more in the contract. And then there was an analysis. And I wish I had it in front of me right now. I'm trying to find it.
Let me just say that in terms of that model, and I say this respectfully because, Stantec may have a lot on their plate and they may not be able to respond to us as we want them to. But that model is the one that he said last, the new one. It is available, and I'm sure that they just, have probably had other things and other deadlines. To my way of thinking, and Allison, I don't know if you want to chime in, I don't know whether us signing a contract now actually will get things to move faster with Stantec.
Well, they would have to finish completing what they're already doing first.
I don't know about that. It just seems, it seems like they are probably a pretty good business and they have a lot of work to do.
Allison,
I'm not trying to not answer your question. I'm just sharing the thoughts that I have as I hear.
Today, though, where he has not gotten updated model information from DEQ. So that's all I know about it.
Now, was the third, I guess the third report, were those options if we did not have well capacity?
Yeah.
So, I mean, he would never go for it. I mean, he's at the stopping point. He's not going to, he got to the point where we are and he thinks that we're good. And so, but part of the contract, he's not going forward with the rest of it. But I haven't seen it. I'm trying to get clarification.
Yeah, without it being
is that
labeled.
right?
We haven't talked about anything further past this point yet, because now we know that there is some water.
Right.
So
Another option might be if you wanted to recess this meeting to another date and time, and maybe we could ask him to come to that, like, next week, or, that way you wouldn't be waiting a whole month. Or you could go ahead and adjourn and have the town manager find out when he's available and schedule a special meeting for sometime next week.
Now, if he hasn't run that model yet, I doubt he'd be able to do it in a week. It would be beneficial, but to have those results.
No, but I think he could answer, even if you just had him available by phone, he could answer your questions about how long things take and what does this mean and, where are we exactly and how long will this part take? And do you know what I mean? It would help you to
What if my motion included, as soon as he gets us this final component, we're going to pull the trigger on it, engaging them and enter into a contract to act on our behalf with DEQ? Would that alleviate everybody's fears? I mean, is there a big swell on council that we're not going to try to raise?
Maybe if you were to phrase that as in, once the final report is in, staff would be instructed to come up with a proposal for council to then vote on that proposal.
All right, I think, I'm just confused. So I guess we need
that
to just-
brings the contract back to us before it's enacted.
No, I got it. Let's just vote this motion that's so convoluted up or down now, because
I do have the original proposal, if you'd like me to read it. Would you like me to read it? Oh,
Not the whole thing. Is there something pertinent to what we are discussing right now
well, it's hard to know.
as to the three?
Scope. Would you like the
three-
scope? I could try.
Just as an aside, I'm giving Ms. Arad's comments on the contract. Personally, I don't want any contract without our attorney seeing it, given the past history here in the town with contracts and things that we don't have information on. I don't want, personally, anything signed or to move forward without her approval.
You could approve it subject to final review and approval by the town attorney, but that really only gives me the authority to go, oh, hey, that's not legal. It doesn't allow for you all to understand what.
Ramifications.
well, the main motivation for my motion was to make a motion to move forward with raising our limit with DEQ. Unless that's not what council wants to do. But I thought we were worried that we didn't have enough water. We hired a consultant that did a study, maybe it's not entirely complete, on some modeling, but he came back and gave us one of these, like, whew, it's not as bad as we were told. So, but he said, you're right at your limit, you need to ask for an increase. I just want to, now that we got the partially good news, I think we need to, my motion is to move ahead with DEQ. And I think, I don't run this meeting, but let's vote this thing up or down. We got a second and we've discussed it to death.
Would you like me to summarize it? What they were supposed to provide? We gave them a lot of data. They were supposed to review that data, do a desktop analysis. They would communicate with other water supply professionals, and they will conduct up to 3 simulations of different groundwater withdrawal rates, and determine the likelihood of proposed withdrawal passing DEQ's technical evaluation. And then they will attend 3 in-person Bowling Green Town Council meetings to communicate the information. And then the final part is, following completion of the desktop evaluation, Stantec will prepare a technical memorandum summarizing our findings and recommendations.
Okay, so why was it on the agenda tonight? Action item, decision by motion, background Southern. We're considering a new water permit application and hiring of a consultant. So if it wasn't finished, and everybody knew it except me, I guess, if it wasn't finished, why is it on the agenda tonight?
Because there was some interest in moving it forward quickly because of the time-sensitive nature.
Which I totally agree. Okay.
Okay, so there is a motion on the table.
Mr. Stork,
We're in motion here.
can I rephrase your motion as I understand it as the conversation has evolved? Your motion is for the town to take all possible reasonable affirmative steps in the next month to move forward toward obtaining additional water sources for the town. I mean, you want concrete things. You don't want just like another month to go by. And so,
Well, Well, I want to do what the action item said. I want to consider a new water permit application and hiring of consultant. So however it makes it best. But I'm just stating what our town manager had as the background and summary for this. So I'm just, did anybody write down my motion?
I could repeat it.
Not to exceed $20,000, right?
That was Jeff's amendment to the motion. So
Let's call
we'll
for it.
do a roll call vote. Mr. Hooley?
No.
Yes.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
Sorry for jumping the gun. No.
No.
Well, can I, on this subject, can I ask that at the next meeting, we get him back to finish up his contract so we can possibly discuss it again and vote on it then, or?
I will certainly bring more information back, the proposal, and.
Do you think it's fair
and-
to ask him to give us our final product in a month's time? His final
Well,
product?
he's over.
His
his time limit.
recommendations?
It sounds like the DEQ model is ready to go, so, yeah, it's,
If he has a problem getting it, I'm happy to do what I can to help.
Can we get a potential contract too?
yes.
Okay. Now the motion crazy is over. Let's move on to number 10. Acceptance of resignation of town manager effective June 30, and approval to advertise the position of town manager and treasurer.
All right, can I get that first part done quickly this time? I'll make a motion to accept the resignation of the town manager effective June 30th or until the hiring of a new town manager.
Second.
Oh, excuse me. All in favor, or should we do a roll call vote?
Or discussion.
Or discussion, excuse me, yeah. Well, then I'll, my comment basically is I would move forward with this. I want to make sure that if we do not have a town manager within the next 6 months, which we'll be really lucky to have, I'd like to have our present town manager stay on as long as possible until we find a new town manager, and not whichever comes first.
I'm in agreement with that, and I would not like to create a vacancy in the town manager position, if that's agreeable with the current town manager.
I believe, that's the question to you, Allison. Would you stay on if we didn't have somebody by June 30th?
Yes, as long as I saw that there was progress being made, yes. I will.
Yes, that's why I added the until the hiring portion.
All right, motions on the floor and seconded by Jean. All in favor, roll call vote, excuse me.
Aye.
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 Okay, that was the first portion of this
I'd like to make another motion.
town, of hiring a town treasurer position, advertising of town treasurer and manager position.
I'll try to take both one at a time. I'd like to make a motion to authorize staff to advertise for the position of town manager.
And
And
treasurer,
town
or you're
treasurer?
doing one
I
at a
was
time?
doing them one at a time.
Oh, okay, sorry. Second? Arthur, Mr. Hooley, are you seconding?
I was adding on to the town treasurer portion. If he's doing
Oh, okay,
separate,
sure. I'll
separate ones, that's
well-
not, he stated separate, so I'm sorry.
Okay, motion on the floor by Mr. Voigt to advertise for a town manager. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, that brings discussion.
Roll call vote?
Not discussion. I want to
Discussion,
speak to this point. we were having continual staff discussions like earlier in the work session. I wanted to do them separately because we didn't hard commit to hiring another treasurer, so I figured separating the two would make sense for the motions. Let's just go ahead and get this one done.
Not to take nothing away from you, Allison, but we have you until at least June 30th. I'm thinking because of the financial not knowings of the town, I think a treasurer or somebody that can delve into that more now would be more advantageous for us to hire somebody that way than a town manager.
I was going to make that motion after this one was done.
You didn't say that.
Well, we're in town manager at the moment.
So do we have a second yet? Yes. We do have a second, okay.
To advertise for town manager. Okay, we have a second by Jean. We'll do a roll call vote. Discussion's ended. Mr. Hooley?
Aye.
No.
Aye.
Aye.
Yes.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
I'll make the motion to authorize staff to advertise for the position of treasurer.
Treasurers.
I'll second it.
Randy seconded? Okay, so we have a motion on the floor by Mr. Voigt to advertise for town treasurer, seconded by Mr. Hagman.
With the prior discussion out of the work session, I guess the agreement of council is that we will move forward with the financial help with the contract position in the interim until this position can be filled. Is that correct? That's what we agreed on earlier.
So to add to that, if we hire a treasurer, wouldn't think it would get one in 2 months anyway, so Tamika would probably, or whomever, would be done with their project before we hire a treasurer. I just want to make sure that the two of them, if we find a treasurer by the grace of God tomorrow, then Tamika's out the door, or will the two of them work in concert?
However, council would like that to
That's
occur.
my question.
I think working consensus for a while.
Yeah, I'll support that.
Well, I think we need to solve the financial variable regardless of, if we're on track
Right.
looking for a treasurer, that's great. But I don't think we wait for a treasurer before we get our little team together to come in and audit
Oh,
and tell
no,
us
that's
where
what
we
I'm not
are.
saying, no. I want to move it forward before we even get the treasurer, that's what I'm saying. I didn't want to have a treasurer come and then say goodbye to whomever.
Yeah, because it
Yeah,
really
we
wouldn't
want
be
the-
fair to bring a new person in.
Correct.
And if we can fix a mess before we dump it on that person's lap.
That's what I was confused about. Okay. Jeff made a motion, second by Randy. Mr. Hooley?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Yes.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, that completes number 10. Informational items. Anything? Anyone?
Not so much informational. I had a couple people come forward to me at the store wanting to know about the flea markets and the farmer's market, about bathroom use. At one time, we let them use the one building, and we decided as council not to let them use it because of security issues. Were they ever fixed? Because they're wanting to know what they're going to do, because it cost them $186 just for the employees to have a bathroom from Porta-John out there. That's what it cost them, is what they're saying. So they're wanting to know about if they can use that bathroom again. I know we said no at the time because of security issues, but were we going to fix that security issue and then let them use that again, or do they need to get a Porta-John again? They're not letting any of their customers use it. It was just for the people there for the farmer's market or the flea market that were actually working it. That was bringing people into town.
I think that the reasoning behind the council's decision, initially I had said yes. I had created a door so that there was a separation between the the office that I and other staff were using. And then, because there's sensitive information in there, and then so that there could be just access to the bathroom. But then the concern was about the bathroom, the cleanliness of the bathroom, all that. So, so then they did get a porta-john for the rest of the season. I did notice, I have to tell you that I did notice that there's another problem that occurs from that door being shut in the middle, and most of the time it is open. Right now it's shut because I'm not over there and there's a lot of personnel documentation. But black mold occurred on the side of the bathroom, and it cost us $2,000 to remedy because, and I believe it was the AC unit. It somehow, for some reason, really has to work harder when there's the door is shut between it. Since the door has been left open in the middle of the building, there hasn't been a problem anymore. So that is one issue. It could be shut on Fridays and reopened on Mondays if council wants to reopen that.
I wasn't asking yes or no. I know it was a security issue was the biggest thing that we had with it, but I have been asked by two of the people on the farmer's market because it cost them $186 for their porta-john, which wasn't for the full season because of, we were letting them use it at the beginning, and then they got one at the end and it cost them $186. And it was, they were basically paying it out of their pockets. So I said I would bring it up tonight, and I did.
Good.
If I could clarify something from the work session for council in regards to the percentage that we were talking about earlier in the notice from DEQ, staff is correct that it is 95% before DEQ would issue that letter. I do believe where the inconsistency came from is this report was from 2016. The permit that we have is effective 2018. So there may have been that change between those 2 years from 80 to 95%. So
That's the sewer.
that is the sewer. So we would not receive notice from DEQ per the literature in the permit until we reach 95% threshold of the design capacity. And that was my problem on that. I just wanted to clarify that up for the
Right.
rest of council. And
Thank you.
it is due for renewal September 30th, 23, it says.
Right.
Right. Okay.
Staff report, but it should be, a draft permit should be within 6 months. He'll have it to us to review, and then it'll be completed. But he sent back a letter that everything looked correct, so within 6 months, he'll have a permit drafted up for review.
Understood.
Who prepared that application? Is that something you did? I mean, staff?
I did and submitted it to him with all the documents they needed.
Okay, I mean, that's very similar to the water, but we feel like we need additional modeling and expertise with water that we don't really need with the sewer. I'm
Sewer,
just curious.
sewer's a little different. What they're looking for is sample data, flow data, and things like that. Water, what they're looking for is that modeling, that engineering, and then also like alternative sources and looking into that. So done by an engineer, so looking at their, intake and everything, and more of the engineering side of that. If it was a straightforward permit, it would probably been a little bit easier, but since you're modifying it, they want that engineering report to show, current usage, future usage, alternative sources, and all that.
How is the wastewater plant doing? I mean, I'd come to some meetings last year where you needed to upgrade, update some things. Are we in good shape on that?
I mean, the equipment needs to be updated because, it currently from 1991, 92 is when it was finished, and that's where it's been. The drying beds is a major issue that needs to be fixed. UV is the next one.
Oh, so we never did upgrade UV?
No.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I mean, you were here talking to council about upgrading, and then council decided not to do that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it would just, some of those were just from prior letters that DEQ, like they come around to their inspections and then,
Actually, I think we asked for a couple more proposals because we only had the one for the 73,000. So I think we were waiting on
Waiting
a
on-
couple
I do remember that
RFPs
discussion.
or whatever proposals. So, so who knows?
Okay.
I got one thing for you too. When you were over there and cleaning that easement, you said those, I told you what kind of problems we had in our house when you guys went in there and blasted that. You said you found a whole bunch of tree roots in there. Is that line cracked? Does that need to be fixed? I mean, the tree roots got in there somehow.
yeah, because that's concrete. So, I mean,
right.
but even with the plastic over time, they'll eventually get in between the two seams of the pipes, but concrete's a little bit easier because it cracks and then it goes. And that was the issue. So.
Josh, do you send all the applications to the town manager before you send them in? So everybody can review them? Or you both
Which
can-
applications?
For the permit?
So so all the information gets sent to the town manager, and then she sent it to me. But all, like the letter as far as like getting renewed, and she was copied on everything, so.
Okay. I just for copy reasons or typos or whatever, just so there's more than one set of eyes.
Yeah, everything was copied. So.
Cool. Anybody else?
Yeah, I had, so just to clarify, so the direction staff that you understood from us on Stantec was you're going to ask them to possibly be here next meeting and provide a sample contract of what they would do for us if we engaged them to go to DEQ?
Yes.
Okay, all right. And then in the work session, we talked about hiring someone, whether it be the lady at the finance lady at the county on the side, or if we ask other people to come help. Did we need to move on that, or are we just going to engage her? Because I'm really I'm all for moving forward on hiring, replacing, but we need to know what our finances are. We need to know, and not only that, I keep hearing from property owners on 301 Corridor that they haven't got a tax bill out there for a couple years, the special tax district. So the continuity, the problem we've had in the last few years with staff continuity, I know that stuff like that can get lost in translation, but are we engaging Tamika?
I was going to, yes.
Okay, okay. And then
I didn't hear objection to it, so I
yeah,
was
no,
definitely.
I think we got a post haste. Now,
Yes.
Jeff and I owe Steve Manster a call back. Do you want him to be available to work with her and give her any information he might have, or look over things with her? Would that be helpful?
That's up to council.
I mean, I think it'd be very helpful. I mean, he's talking about coming in and providing historical data that, yeah, I mean, I don't see how that can hurt.
Okay.
I mean, I'll give my 2 cents. We've made a motion to move forward with the post and the position, so I'd say if he's an interested candidate, we already have a town manager in that position, then.
No, Arthur, are you thinking that I'm saying I'm proposing Steve Manster for a position?
Are we bringing him in as a contract, because we're bringing another employee in as a contractor?
No, you
That's
just
how I
said that you understood that we were advertising to hire a town manager, which we are. Steve
And
Manster, yeah, but Steve Manster was talked about asking him to come in and just help fill in some blanks so we can know. Because at the last meeting, I asked the question, how much money do we had? And everybody looked at me with crickets. That's a problem.
Are we placing him on a contract? That's what I'm asking.
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. Asking him to come down, did you get the impression he was going to charge?
It didn't seem that way, no.
Yeah.
So
I have
Andrea.
no idea. I'm just saying
excuse
if
me.
I'd leave that up. We have a town manager. I would reach out to her for expertise on that.
Well, but I did last meeting. I asked the question, how much?
So I'm usually very open to anybody who wants to help, sometimes to my detriment. The one thing that I would say, though, at this moment, I really need Tamika Smith to come in and help us retrieve the data because anybody who doesn't know how to actually retrieve the data from Bright and from Keystone is going to sit here and not be able to function.
Then why don't we just leave it, if she has any questions, we'll give her his contact information, she can call him. You know, if she has a question about, hey, what did this look like in 2016?
That would be ideal.
That's fine.
Yeah, so
I'm in favor
I
of that.
I think things got sideways when Jeff and I met with him. It was never an intention to see if we can pull back the retirees into the, never. It was just for information, because just like you said earlier, man, the stewardship of the taxpayers' money is number one. Before we wax the floors, before we do anything, if we don't know where the taxpayers' money is and accounted for, then we don't need to do anything till we get that fixed.
So Tamika would need a confidentiality agreement, correct?
Yes.
And
I have one. I just pulled the one that the town attorney provided to us.
Okay, so if for some reason Tamika did need to have Mr. Manster come in and discuss things, does he need one as well? He will need one?
Yeah,
Okay.
yes. There's only certain people that are allowed to see
Right, that's what, I
that.
just want to
It's
make
even
sure we all
questionable.
are aware. Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
And they all have signed confidentiality agreements. We're all set.
Okay, no other questions, concerns, motions?
I make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
There you go. Second? So adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Can I have a couple of your constituents? Yeah.